Clearly, the mid-year review will not have any impact beyond what the debt exchange program has had, because clearly it won't. But you see, when I listened to Dr. Stephen Amoah, the Deputy Minister for Finance, talked about revenue challenges. And here you have he and his government, in the midst of having revenue challenges, decide a clear line of revenue that every country that we all know rely on, road tolls. You decide to say that you're not taking road tolls. And you hear the argument that it is not bringing so much, it's just bringing 98 million Ghana cedi. And that is, that instead of putting more efficient measures to rake in more revenue from such sources, you rather decide to clear it. And you come and sit here and talk about revenue not being enough when you are throwing away sources of revenue that every country, tell me which country that you have traveled to that don't rely on road tolls. But Samson, like Prof said, the problem we had with COVID was not the virus COVID-19, but it was how we managed the funds that came into the system. And this report of the Auditor General, even as many persons even questioned some of the issues that was raised in the Auditor General's report, still tells you a very, very bad and precarious story of how we manage COVID funds. And the Public Account Committee this week have been looking into this report. And they are unable to provide answers to how they spent our money. And so government continue to quote COVID as the reason for the problem, but it was not the virus that caused us the problem, but how the same government managed the funds that was vested in their hands is what has brought us to this state of affairs. Debt. Samson, you hear him say, oh, we have lowered it. How have you lowered it? You inherit a system where debt to GDP was less than, let me even give, say 60% or even less. You shot it up to over 100% at a certain point. Thank God the debt management or the restructuring has...
Sorry, not to cut you. Do you know the debt to GDP of Kenya, which has led the people onto the streets?
Yeah. And their inflation is less than 8%.
Even less than 8%, yes.
Something. Let me tell you that. What Kenyans are going through is less than 1/4 of what Ghanaians have gone through. That's
good. We are convinced. Allow me to also speak. They did not ambush.
Say that in a
They
second.
didn't go on demonstration because of debt to GDP.
Okay.
It was, purported introduction of new taxes they didn't want to pay. It's not the debt to GDP. That's
but what is different?
I've had conversations with Kenyans.
But of course, we have various
former Chief Justice of Kenya. Just in the last
Do we
week.
also consider all the pro-poor policies we are spending a lot on compared to other countries?
It's not your 10
Are we doing that?
It's not your 10 yet, yes.
No, compared to Kenya. You don't have to ambush one person. That is not correct.
Samson, if you ask them, they will tell you, oh, we have paid so much into LEAP. We have paid so much into school feeding. These are things that existed pre. So they are not new things that you have what? Introduced. Indeed, the coverage has actually even reduced. It is just because the amount has been adjusted slightly, and that is why you see a certain quantum spend in that area. Not because you have even covered more vulnerable persons. So you cannot sit here and be quoting those things. Of course, we also hear recently the Auditor General's findings about the school feeding issues and what is happening in there. So it tells you that even what we are celebrating, again, there's so much rot in that sector. And we need to completely deal with this. Government is refusing to reduce size. There may be a trigger, but there are many underlying issues that could have triggered the people to go on the street. And we are doing the same thing here. Reduce size. Côte d'Ivoire, they have done the same. when they came out of COVID and realized that there's a need to manage their system, what do? They reduce the size of what government. In our case, we are actually even appointing more ministers of states for sectors that already have substantive ministers. You have a minister for local government. You have minister for sanitation. Then you have minister of state at the office of the president for local government. When you are reducing responsibility, that ministry used to be responsible for sanitation, responsible for local governance and all issues. You have broken it down into pieces and have substantive ministers and their deputies, and now have a minister of state responsible for just a small section that used to be run by just one minister and two deputies.
Well, Bamia says you do 50.
But John
Mahama says you do 50.
But you see something, that lies my worry. Yeah. You remember, the reframe was that, and the president have told us, he brought Dr. Bawumia to help him deal with the economy. I have not heard Dr. Bawumia himself or any of his spokespersons say the president doesn't listen to him. The argument they were advancing at a certain point is that the Minister of Finance doesn't listen to him.
Okay.
Then now, there was agitation. So the Minister of Finance gets removed and introduce someone we all know will listen to Dr. Bawumia. Dr. Bawumia, before the introduction of this minister, was already preaching some economic policies that he thinks will work, including e-levy that must go, so many things that must go. Now the one who listens to you comes in, and still we have all those things there.
All right.
You think I should believe you?
Okay.